Let's talk about running backs that you should start or sit in week 4 of the fantasy football season. We'll go through all 32 teams, 16 matchups in total. You can check out the description for time codes or pause your screen to go to the matchup that you want to preview. And here's the terminology we'll use throughout the video. And by the way, I'm guaranteeing a reply to the first 3 comments of every video this year, so make sure you're subscribed and you've turned your notifications on. Starting with Thursday Night Football, we've got the Seahawks at the Cardinals. Now, let's talk about Arizona's side of things because obviously RIP to James Conner. He's not going to be with us for the rest of the season. When James Conner went down, it was the Trey Benson show. He had 40 of 66 total snaps, had 13 total opportunities. Amari DiMarcano was the other running back that got rotation. He only had 3 touches, and with those 3 touches, he did absolutely nothing. Completely ineffective. Trey Benson has been trusted through the air, on the ground. I do anticipate him being their bell cow running back from here on out. This is a really talented running back that just never really got an opportunity because James Conner was so good. I think Thursday night could be the first time people see how good Trey Benson really is. He is a spot start for me, my RB27. He's in play if you don't have a better option. And throughout this entire video, you will see my rankings for every running back so you'll know exactly where I stand. Let's talk about the opposite side of the ball because oddly enough, this might sound weird, but I actually feel like the Seahawks, it's a more difficult running back room to digest than Arizona. Arizona seems very straightforward, but Zach Charbonnet fully practiced on Monday. He's going to keep practicing. He's going to be ready to go for this game on Thursday night. And this coaching staff has been very vocal in telling us it's going to be a split backfield. We have 2 RB1s, which means they're going to split work down the middle. There inevitably will be disappointments from Ken Walker, from Zach Charbonnet. That will be a part of this backfield for the majority of this season. Right now, I trust Ken Walker more than I trust Zach Charbonnet. The good news for every running back in this matchup is that both the Seahawks and the Cardinals are top 10 in points allowed to the running back position in fantasy football. So you can start your Walker, you can flex your Charbonnet if you're in a desperate spot, you can start your Trey Benson if you don't have a better option. But again, we will have to really digest this Seahawks running back room as we go on Thursday night. Okay, this is the first London game of the year. We've got Vikings at Steelers. Make sure you set your lineups early because obviously things are going to be earlier than you're anticipating if you haven't looked at the schedule here in week number 4 into London town. Second lowest over under of the week. So Vegas does not anticipate a lot of fantasy points coming from this matchup. However, what we have in this matchup is 2 running backs who are the unquestioned workhorses in their offenses, right? Starting off with Jordan Mason, our start of the week last week. He had 16 carries in a blowout, right, versus the Bengals, 116 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was absolutely fantastic. You love to see that. You can continue to start him until he proves you wrong. Right now, he's got to be in every single lineup. On the opposite side of the ball, here's what's great for Jaylen Warren. Now, while it wasn't some huge fantasy game, he only had 13.1 PPR points. While it wasn't some huge fantasy game, he was by far their guy in this backfield. 43 of 54 snaps. What we were seeing in the first 3 weeks is they were trying to give more opportunities to Kenneth Gainwell than any of us were comfortable with. Kenneth Gainwell's role completely shrinked in their last game, and we saw Jaylen Warren with 24 total touches. So just based off of the volume alone, he should be a name that goes into your lineup. And of course, for the Vikings, by the way, JJ McCarthy not healthy, so it'll be Carson Wentz once again. Okay, let's go to the start of the 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time slated games on Sunday. All right, we've got the Commanders at the Falcons. Now, interesting backfield. We need to talk about this running back room in Washington. My expectations, personally, was that Bill Krosky was going to be, the first and second down back. We're going to have Jeremy McNichols worked in as a satellite back, and Rodriguez was going to be a depth piece. Now, what the Commanders actually did is they didn't change the rotation at all. They just replaced Eckler's role with Chris Rodriguez. And this entire year, we haven't seen Bill Krosky-Merritt start a game. He has not played for the first 2 drives for this team. And that's exactly what they did again last Sunday, okay? And I don't know how to tell you to anticipate anything else until further notice. Now, the good news is JCM did lead the way. After those first 2 drives, he was the dominant running back, but it doesn't look like we're going to get a JCM start anytime soon. There are little things they still need to trust him with. So until further notice, this looks like a true 3-way split backfield and not one that you want to be a part of. You can't rely on a touchdown every week for JCM. You can't rely on a 70-yard touchdown for Jeremy McNichols. It's not going to happen. He's a sell high if you can get anything for him. Now, if we get reports that come out, hey, this team is going to start Bill Krosky-Merritt, Rodriguez is going to take more of a backseat, great, we will be more aggressive with him. But until that point, this is a true three-way, and again, not the type that you want to be a part of. You can start them if you're in a desperate situation, but lower your expectations. Now, on the opposite side of the ball, the Falcons, this is very simple. I know their offense was a complete mess last week, but Bijan Robinson is going to be in your starting lineup each and every week. You don't need me to really tell you that. All right, let's move on to the Saints at the Bills. Now, here's the good news. This matchup, 48.5 point over-under, that is tied with two other matchups for the highest over-under of the week. So Vegas thinks we'll see a ton of fantasy points in this matchup. Here's the bad news. The Bills are favored by 16.5 points. That is the largest spread of the week. It's the largest spread I've seen this entire season. I have not seen a heavy favorite like that this entire year. Even thinking back to last year, I can't think of a favorite that big. So James Cook is set to smash again. I mean, he should just be absolutely incredible once again. On Thursday Night Football last week, he played 40 of 60 snaps. He had 19 carries, 3 targets, 22 total opportunities, and again, absolutely dominant. 21 total fantasy points, 108 yards, the rushing touchdown. He continues to thrive in a great offense. He faces the Saints, who are giving up the 7th most points to fantasy running backs. Smash start. Now, for Alvin Kamara, you are going to go ahead and put him out there again, just purely because of the type of volume that he's seeing. On Sunday, he played 54 of 73 snaps. He had 20 total touches. Unfortunately, this game was just out of hand in the first quarter. In the first quarter, it was out of hand. That's how badly the Saints were dominated. So Alvin Kamara just couldn't get going, but from a touches perspective, you got to put him in your lineup. Okay, let's jump to the Browns at the Lions. 45.5 point over under, the second largest spread of the week. And obviously that's in favor of the Detroit Lions. Now for Quinshon Judkins, we were hesitant to play him last week against one of the best defenses in the NFL, the Green Bay Packers. The Packers had shut down every backfield, right, this year. And then Quinshon Judkins comes in, dominates opportunities, has 18 rushing attempts, 94 yards, and a touchdown. Dominant performance versus one of the best defenses in the NFL. So I don't know how I can now tell you on this video in good consciousness to sit Quinshon Judkins. I can't tell you to do that. He needs to be in your starting lineup if you have him. Now, on the opposite side of the ball, here's the bad news. The Browns give up the second fewest points to running backs through 3 weeks. Here's the good news. You don't sit Gibbs and Montgomery because this entire offense is built around the run game. You saw that on Monday Night Football. Those guys are locked and loaded into your lineups. All right, let's go to Titans at Texans. 38.5 point over under. This is actually the lowest over under of the week. It's the lowest over under so far of the entire season, actually. So Vegas does not expect there to be a lot of fantasy points in this matchup. This is also tied for the third largest spread of the week. The Texans are favored by 7.5 points. I think that's a bit aggressive. I don't think the Texans have showed us anything to warrant that type of favoritism, but let's talk about their backfield because these are two teams that are currently really good matchups for your running backs, Nick Chubb and Woody Marks. I think this is a very difficult position to be in if you have to start one of these names. I wouldn't really want to start one of these names. If Nick Chubb gets into the end zone, he'll be a fine play. If he doesn't, he'll be disastrous. That is just a fact. What we saw on Sunday is the Texans completely got rid of Dare Ogunbowale, and they gave all of Dare Ogunbowale's snaps to Woody Marks. Now, Woody Marks played 30 snaps compared to 33 for Nick Chubb. They almost split opportunities down the middle. It's getting closer and closer every week. You can see Woody Marks' snaps actually grow over the course of the last 3 weeks from 11% to 27% to 48%. So we could see Woody Marks take over this backfield any given week. Given the nature of how bad this offensive line is, I would not trust to start either of these names. These are Hail Mary plays at best. On the opposite side of the ball, like we have always said, just a broken record at this point, with the Tennessee Titans backfield until Tajay Spears is back, you keep playing Tony Pollard purely because of the volume that he will see. Now, that doesn't mean that you're going to be excited about playing Tony Pollard, right? 13.9 points last week, and he got into the end zone. He's a very, how do I say, low ceiling, but high floor play, if you will, because of the volume, but you can put him into your lineup, and it is a good matchup technically. All right, we've got the Panthers at the Patriots next. It's a 43.5 point over under. The Patriots are favored by 4.5 points. Let's start with the Panthers backfield. The Patriots are giving up the 11th most points to fantasy running backs, so this should be a decent day for Chuba Hubbard. He's my RB19 this week. He has no competition in that backfield. You can play him with confidence. Now, on the opposite side of the ball, things get really tricky with the New England Patriot backfield. Now, what I would love to tell you is, okay, after Antonio Gibson came out here in week 2 and fumbled, I think they're going to get rid of his role. What I would love to tell you is it's going to be clear now. Ramondre Stevenson, he fumbled twice, so surely his role is going to be put to bed. I'd love to come out here and say Travion Henderson is going to lead the way and we're all going to love this. We're going to be so happy because we finally get to see Henderson in a feature role. But that would just be nonsense because at the end of the day, we have to see it before we believe it with this coaching staff, with McDaniels, right? I mean, we just cannot trust it until we see it. But if I am going to start one of these names, it is going to be Travion Henderson. And I truly believe we are just waiting on the breakout that could be this week. You would expect more opportunities for Henderson. You would expect less of a role for Ramondre Stevenson after he fumbles twice. That's my expectations with my rankings. If I had to start one, it's Henderson, but I don't have the utmost confidence in doing that. Okay, we've got the Chargers at the Giants next. 45.5 point over under. The Chargers are favored by 5.5 points. This is another opportunity for Amarion Hampton to smash. Obviously, so sad for Najee Harris. Terrible that happened to him in his personal life. But this is obviously great for Amarion Hampton's fantasy value. Came out last week, absolutely smashed over 23 fantasy points. They used him in the air, on the ground, and he should be the dominant running back in this backfield. Hassan Haskins is not going to be a problem. And he faces the Giants, who are currently the 4th best matchup for your fantasy running back. A top 12 play for me in week number 4. Now, on the opposite side of the ball, we are going to go ahead and tell you, you can put Cam Skattebo into your lineups. I truthfully think that you can. Now, we already have confirmation that Tyrone Tracy will not play this week because of the shoulder dislocation. So that should give you enough confidence to say, well, I know straight away, straight off the bat, that Skattebo is going to be the lead back in this backfield, right? Here on Sunday Night Football, Cam Skattebo had 39 of 66 snaps. He had 18 total touches, 8 targets through the air as well. He ended up in the end zone, 6 yards per carry, super dynamic, super explosive, running through the defense like the Kool-Aid man runs through walls. He was absolutely fantastic. He will be their feature back again here in week number 4. You can start him with a ton of confidence, even though it's not a great matchup. News is constantly changing in the NFL, and so are my fantasy football rankings. The 2025 season pass is your secret weapon for the season. $34 one-time purchase. When you use my promo code LAND, it's about $3 per week for the rest of the season. You get unlimited access to my rest of season rankings, my weekly rankings. As soon as I hit submit, you'll know where I stand. You get some vouchers to come on our live stream and ask us questions, as well as all the premium tools on the Flock site. So check that out in the comments below if you're interested. Okay, Eagles at Bucks. Let's keep this simple. You're going to start Saquon Barkley. You don't need me to tell you that. Now, on the opposite side of the ball, let's talk about the Buccaneers. Because while Bucky Irving didn't have the best fantasy day last week, he did have a lot of encouraging signs to that game. For example, he had 29 total touches compared to just 6 for Rachaad White. Now, if you go and you look at the efficiency, both Rachaad White and Bucky Irving were not efficient on the ground versus the New York Jets. You have to keep in mind, this team has a ton of injuries on the offensive line, but the good news is at any point, we're going to get Tristan Wirfs back at tackle, and that's going to elevate this rushing game to another level. But Bucky Irving, from a volume perspective, one of the most dominant running backs in the league. So while it is against the Eagles, that's concerning to me. I don't see how you sit a Bucky Irving. Okay, let's talk about the Colts and the Rams. We are now getting into the afternoon slate of games. Jonathan Taylor, absolute superstar, maybe one of the picks of the year, even though he was a second-round pick, maybe one of the picks of the year so far. Absolutely smashing it out of the gate. You got to start him. I don't care that this is the most difficult matchup for running backs. Through 3 weeks, you put Taylor in your matchup. 47.5 point over under. Vegas expects a ton of fantasy points, and it should be a really close game. Now for Kyren Williams, same thing. You put him in there, had a great week last week, a part of a high-powered offense. These are 2 guys that you're starting with confidence and hoping they are the reason that you win your fantasy week in week number 4. All right, let's jump into the Jags at the 49ers. 45.5 point over under. The 49ers are favored by 3.5 points. Now, here's the good news. Travis Etienne at this point is still the dominant running back in this backfield. You look on Sunday, he had 38 snaps. Bashul Tutin had 12, and we had a little roll for LaKent Allen, which I'm sure that annoyed plenty of people, and rightfully so. But Travis Etienne, 16 carries, 1 target. Bashul Tutin, 7 total touches. So at the moment, Bashul Tutin, if he doesn't get into the end zone, is going to bust big time in your lineup. So be very cautious playing him. I have labeled him a risky start, meaning 95% of you guys have a better play out there. But if you're in a Hail Mary situation, you can throw him in there because they are willing to use him on the goal line. Now for Travis Etienne, I know it wasn't the best fantasy day, but he is very well and clearly still the number 1 running back in this backfield. So you can trust that here in week number 4. Now on the opposite side of the ball, of course, Christian McCaffrey, going to be in your lineup. We said this week 1, 2, and 3, but every single time he plays, he's my RB1. I don't care what their opponent is. Now it looks like we are going to get Brock Purdy back, which is great news because obviously Mac Jones was dealing with some injuries, but it doesn't really matter. I mean, they could put me at quarterback and I would target CMC 10 times probably per game. Okay, let's jump to the Ravens at the Chiefs. This is one of those 3 matchups that is tied for the highest over-under of the week, 48.5 points. The Ravens are favored by 3 points, even though it's in Kansas City. And honestly, I get it because the Chiefs are really tough to watch right now. Derrick Henry must start. Started Monday night so beautifully. I mean, the long touchdown run, and then it just went downhill from there. Another fumble, 3 fumbles in 3 games. That is something we will have to monitor. But the reality is, the Ravens can't afford not to run Derrick Henry. They can't afford it. They're not going to put Keaton Mitchell and Justice Hill in that backfield and rotate them. Derrick Henry is going to be the dude for this team. That's just point blank period. They're not going to change their ways. Now, on the opposite side of the ball, even though the Ravens are one of the best matchups for your running backs, I cannot in good conscience tell you to start Pacheco or Kareem Hunt. I just don't know how I would do that. Last week was the week for Pacheco to smash when he faced the New York Giants. And in that game, Isaiah Pacheco had 10 carries. But then when it came to the goal line opportunities, they gave it to Kareem Hunt. How can you trust Isaiah Pacheco when they're so willing to give Kareem Hunt the short yardage and the goal line opportunities? I don't want to play anyone in this matchup. I don't also anticipate the Chiefs being up big time and able to run the ball anyway. So I think this is going to be messy. And I don't think you should play either of these running backs. Let's go to Bears at Raiders. Now we're going to start DeAndre Swift only because he just gets so much work that it's hard to sit him. He's basically the equivalent of Tony Pollard, but he's in a better offense. You just can't sit a guy that's getting that much opportunity, right? We are all begging for opportunity off the waiver wire for running backs. You have to put Swift into your lineup. On the opposite side, same thing for Ashton Jeanty. Now, I will admit to you guys, it's really frustrating to see Ashton Jeanty not get more work through the air. You can see here on Sunday, Jeanty had 0 targets. That's because they had a role for Zamir White and Dylan Labe on 3rd downs. That was really frustrating to see, but still 17 touches for Ashton Jeanty. His role is only going to grow over the course of the season, so I don't see how you sit him, especially in a matchup that's a plus matchup versus the Bears. They're giving up the 6th most points to fantasy running backs through 3 weeks. Okay, that takes us to Sunday Night Football. We've got the Packers at the Cowboys. This is the last matchup that is tied for the highest over-under of the week, 48.5 points. The Packers are favored by 5.5 points. I get that, honestly. I do think they should be favorites, which is good news for Josh Jacobs. I mean, Josh Jacobs should have one of his best games this year. I anticipate the Packers being up early and often, and I anticipate Josh Jacobs getting a ton of work in the second half of this game. He's my RB6 on the week. Start him with a ton of confidence. Now, as far as the opposite side of the ball, while this is a difficult matchup for Javonte Williams, because he's in such a high-powered offense and he's so clearly the guy in this backfield, I find it difficult to tell anybody to sit him. He's an absolute must-start in my eyes. Last week, he had 15 total touches. Unfortunately, he had that strange fumble where it was ripped out of his hands on the sideline, but I don't imagine that this team is going to take any work away from him from that. You very rarely see that. What I will say is maybe we have to lower expectations. So instead of Javonte being a top 12 play this week, maybe he's a top 20. And a part of that has to do with the Dallas Cowboys left guard Tyler Booker, who is going to be out for a while as well. He was a great piece for their offensive line, so they're going to have to replace him as well against Micah Parsons and this defense. Hopefully, volume will carry the way for Javonte Williams. All right, we've got 2 Monday Night Football games this week. I know a lot of you guys like this, so I'm not going to talk trash on the doubleheader. I'm not a fan myself. But we've got the Jets and the Dolphins. Let's talk about Breece Hall first. I know it wasn't great last week, but still, Breece Hall is the guy in this backfield. All those concerns about Braylon Allen should be put to rest at this point. Braylon Allen is just, he's a preseason hero. And then when the actual NFL starts, it's like, yeah, Breece Hall is clearly the best running back in this backfield. Now, on Sunday, we saw 9 carries, 6 targets though. So even if Breece Hall is in a negative game script, he has a safe floor because of the amount of targets that he sees in this offense. But this offense is built around the run game. The Dolphins are terrible against the run. They're the 5th best matchup for your running backs. Breece Hall has a great chance to bounce back in week 4. And then of course, Devon Achane, he's on track to be this team's leading wide receiver. I wouldn't be shocked if he led the team in targets this year. So of course, you got to put Devon Achane into your lineups as well. The NFL season is just getting started. I'm so excited for week number 4. I just submitted my latest DFS lineup on FastDraft's Quick 6 Super Slam. Here's what we're rocking with. We've got Puka Nacua versus the Colts, James Cook versus the Saints. I think he's going to go crazy. Marion Hampton versus the Giants. Those 2 running backs, I cannot wait to put them in my lineups this week. Rome Odunze at the Raiders, Nico versus the Titans, and how about Cam Scatterbo versus the Chargers without Tyrone Tracy? I'm rocking with those guys in my lineup. You can make a lineup yourself. All you have to do is choose 6 non-quarterbacks. The highest scorer each week wins the most money. Download the FastDraft app, use the promo code LAND. I'll match your deposit up to $50, and then you'll get my week 4 rankings completely free. Check that out in the description below. All right, this brings us to the last game of the week. We've got Bengals at Broncos here. 44.5 point over under, and the Broncos are favored by 7.5 points. Now, this is also tied for the 3rd largest spread of the week. The Broncos are favored by 7.5 points. After what we saw last week, Vegas doesn't anticipate it getting all that much better for the Bengals. I think there are 2 clear must-start running backs in this matchup, Chase Brown and J.K. Dobbins. I know what you're thinking. Are you really going to start Chase Brown, Zach? Yes, I am. I understand the concern. I understand why everybody would be hesitant to do so. But I do believe Chase Brown, number 1, this offense is going to be better. They can't be that bad again. They're going to be better. Jake Browning is not great, but he's not that bad either, okay? This offense is going to be better. We had 15 touches for Chase Brown in week number 3, and I would expect at least 15 touches again on Monday Night Football. So yes, lower your expectations. Maybe you're happy with 10 points, but with the amount of times he touches the ball, now you view Chase Brown, instead of the way you view Bucky Irving and some of these top names, you view him the way you view Tony Pollard. Purely based off of the amount of times he touches the ball, it would just be really hard to sit that guy, okay? Now, on the opposite side of the ball, J.K. Dobbins just keeps playing so well. He keeps playing so well that he's making the Broncos hide R.J. Harvey, really. I mean, on Sunday, we all saw the incredible play that he made out of the backfield. I would have won my matchup, by the way, if that was ruled a passing touchdown. But because they ruled that a rushing touchdown, I lost my matchup. I love fantasy football. But he made an incredible play, obviously out of the backfield, 83 rushing yards, 1 touchdown, even though it's technically a reception. He's the guy right now. He is leading the way. He's leading the backfield. It's not even close. And this is the best matchup for your fantasy running backs. So you're going to put J.K. Dobbins out there, and you're going to play him with a ton of confidence. Guys, I appreciate you so much for watching the video. Do me a favor, hit the like button to show some love. Subscribe if you like the content, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Nothing but love. Draft with me every night this week on the FastDraft app, where there are thousands of dollars to be won weekly. Getting started is easy. Download the FastDraft app, use the promo code LAND at signup to get your deposit match up to $50. That's up to 10 free entries on us. And when you finish your first DFS contest, I'll send you my weekly rankings completely free. Check out the link in the pinned comment to start drafting today.